My wife sat across from me in a quiet cafe and said, "I don't feel the same excitement anymore." I thanked her for the honesty, closed our shared business account, moved to a new city for opportunity, and eventually she realized routine had been stability. "I don't feel the same excitement anymore." She said it quietly, the way you say something you've been rehearsing for weeks. I looked at her across the small wooden table. The cafe was nearly empty. There was soft jazz playing from somewhere near the counter, the kind of music nobody picks on purpose. I had a half-finished cup of coffee in front of me. She had herbal tea. She always ordered herbal tea when she was nervous. I noticed that. I noticed a lot of things in that moment. The way she held the mug with both hands. The way she wouldn't look at me directly. The way her voice stayed flat, controlled, like she was reading from a script inside her head. I set my cup down. I didn't rush to fill the silence. I let it sit there between us. And then I said something that surprised even me. "Thank you for telling me." She blinked. That wasn't the reaction she expected. I could tell by the way her shoulders shifted slightly. She had prepared for an argument, maybe even a breakdown. She had prepared for me to beg or get angry or go pale. She hadn't prepared for calm. And honestly, neither had I. Hey viewers, before we move on to the video, please make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button if you want to see more stories like this. We were 34 years old, married for 6 years, together for almost 9. We had built something real together. Not just a marriage, a business. A small but growing logistics consulting firm we had started from my home office 4 years ago. It had grown into something with 12 clients, 2 part-time contractors, and a revenue that finally let us both breathe. That business was ours. Every late night, every failed pitch, every version of the website we had scrapped and rebuilt, every argument about pricing strategy, and every celebration after a signed contract. That was us. All of that was us. And now she was sitting across from me in a quiet cafe, telling me she didn't feel the excitement anymore. I drove home alone that evening. She had said she needed some time to think. I didn't fight it. I unlocked the front door. I walked through the house we had rented together for 3 years. I looked at the framed photo on the hallway wall. It was from our 2nd anniversary. We were at the coast. She was laughing at something I had said. I don't even remember what it was, but I remember the sound. I went into the kitchen. I poured a glass of water. I stood there for a long time, and I asked myself one honest question. When was the last time I felt excited about us? The silence in that kitchen answered me before I could. The next morning, I went into the shared office we used. A converted spare bedroom with 2 desks facing opposite walls. I sat at mine. I opened my laptop. I pulled up our joint business account. I looked at the balance. I looked at the transaction history. I looked at the names of our clients. And then I did something I hadn't planned the night before. I called the bank. I separated my portion of the business assets into an individual account. Every document, every contract, every client folder I had personally brought in. I noted the business expenses I had personally covered. I wasn't being spiteful. I want to be clear about that. I was being practical. Because the moment she said those words in that cafe, something in me understood that things were already broken. The only question was what shape the pieces would take when they landed. And I had spent too many years building something to watch it dissolve without clarity. She came home that night. I had made dinner. Something simple. She sat at the kitchen table and looked at me the way you look at someone when you're trying to figure out how they're still standing. "You seem fine," she said. "I'm not," I said, "but I'm functional." She nodded. "I wasn't trying to hurt you," she said. "I know," I said. "Hurt would be easier." She didn't respond to that. We ate. We talked about nothing. We talked about a client meeting scheduled for Thursday. We talked about whether the kitchen faucet was still dripping. We talked like 2 people maintaining altitude. Not climbing. Not falling. Just hovering above the thing neither of us wanted to name directly. Later, she went to bed early. I stayed at the kitchen table with a notebook. I wrote down 3 things. 1. What I needed financially to exit the business cleanly. 2. What I needed professionally to land somewhere new. 3. What I was not going to do. That last list was important. I was not going to chase her. I was not going to perform heartbreak in front of her. I was not going to make myself small in the hope that it would make her feel responsible. I had seen men do that. I had watched friends beg their way back into relationships that never wanted them. I wasn't going to be that. Not because I didn't love her, but because I respected myself enough to know that love without mutuality is just loneliness with a familiar face. 2 weeks passed. She was still living in the house. We were cordial, eerily so. Friends who knew us would have seen nothing different. But between us, there was a distance that had no specific origin point. It had been building. I could see that now. I could trace it back across months. The vacations we had talked about, but never booked. The evenings I had worked late because she had already gone to bed. The conversations that started to feel like updates. Status reports between two people who used to stay up until 2 in the morning talking about nothing important. We had stopped being curious about each other. That was the quiet truth of it. Not hatred. Not infidelity. Not some explosive betrayal. Just a gradual, gentle erosion. The kind that happens when two people are so focused on building the same thing that they forget to keep building each other. It was my friend Owen who gave me the push I needed. He and I had known each other since college. We had stayed close through the years in a low-maintenance way. Calls every few months. The occasional weekend. He had moved to a city about 4 hours away for work and had been telling me for 2 years that the consulting market there was wide open. I called him on a Tuesday afternoon. I told him what had happened. Not the full version. Just the outline. He listened. He didn't say I'm sorry until I finished. Then he said it. And then he said something else. There's a firm here that's been looking for someone with exactly your background. I said nothing for a moment. I'm not trying to turn your life upheaval into a recruitment pitch, he said. But I've been waiting for a reason to send you the listing. I laughed. The first real laugh I had managed in 2 weeks. Send it, I said. He did. I read it that evening. And something lit up inside my chest. Not excitement for what I was losing. Excitement for what might be possible. I applied for the role on a Thursday morning. I told no one. Not her. Not my parents. Not anyone except Owen. I had a phone interview within a week. It went well. A second call the following Tuesday. Also well. By the end of the month, I had an offer letter sitting in my inbox. I read it 4 times. Then I closed the laptop. I sat in the silence of that converted spare bedroom office. And I thought about what it would mean to actually do this. To leave the city I had lived in for over a decade. To leave the business I had built with her. To leave a marriage that wasn't technically over, but was no longer alive. To go somewhere new. Entirely alone. Entirely from scratch. The thought was terrifying. The thought was also the first time in months I had felt like myself. I told her on a Sunday. Not over dinner. Not in bed. I sat across from her on the couch. The same way I imagined she had sat across from me in that cafe and rehearsed what she was going to say. I told her I had accepted a position in another city. I told her I was planning to move within 6 weeks. I told her I wanted to handle the business separation cleanly and fairly. I told her I wasn't punishing her. I told her I was doing what made sense. She stared at me. You've already accepted it, she said. Yes, I said. When did you apply? A few weeks ago, I said. After the cafe. She looked away. I didn't expect this, she said. I know, I said. What did you expect? I asked. Not harshly. Genuinely. She was quiet for a long time. I don't know, she said. Maybe that we'd figure it out. Figure what out? I said. You said you didn't feel the excitement, I said. I'm not going to argue that back into you. She pressed her lips together. I wasn't asking you to leave, she said. I know, I said. But I wasn't willing to stay and pretend, I said. That wouldn't have been fair to either of us. The next few weeks were the most surreal of my life. We were dividing a life. Not loudly. Not bitterly. Just carefully. Like two people dismantling something valuable that neither of them wants to damage even as they dismantle it. We sat with a lawyer friend and worked out the business separation. It took 3 sessions. There were moments of tension. One disagreement over a client account that had started as hers, but that I had grown significantly. We worked it out. Neither of us walked away completely happy with every line. But we walked away clean. That mattered to me. I needed the clean. I was packing up my portion of the office one evening. She was in the doorway watching me fold cables into a box. Do you hate me? She asked. I stopped. I thought about it honestly. No, I said. I think I'm sad, I said. But hate is a lot of energy, I said. And I need mine for something else right now. She nodded. That sounds lonely, she said. It is, I said. But it's honest. I drove to the new city on a Friday in October. The back of my car was packed in the careful way you pack when you're choosing what your next life will look like. No furniture. Just clothes, my laptop, documents, and a box of things I couldn't leave behind. A book my father had given me when I graduated. A small framed print I had bought at a street market during a trip I took alone years before I met her. A coffee thermos that had been on every early morning work call for 4 years. Small things. But mine. Owen had helped me find a furnished apartment. Short-term lease. Nothing fancy. Clean enough. I pulled up in front of the building at around 7 in the evening. The city was alive in that Friday evening way. People moving. Lights coming on. A restaurant across the street with the warm glow of full tables. I sat in the car for a moment. Nobody in this city knew me. Nobody had an idea of who I had been or what I had lost or what I had chosen. I was just a man with a car full of his things and a new job starting Monday. That was terrifying. That was also, genuinely, the beginning. The first Monday was hard. Not the job itself. The job was actually good. The team was sharp and the work was exactly the kind of challenge I had been craving. The hard part was the evening. I came back to the furnished apartment. I microwaved something. I sat at a small kitchen table alone. And the silence had weight. Not the kind of silence I had been living in at the house with her. That silence had tension woven through it. This silence was just empty. No history. No residue. Just a man eating dinner alone in a city where nobody knew his name. I called Owen. He answered on the second ring. First day, he said. Yeah, I said. Hard evening, he said. A bit, I said. Good, he said. That means it's real. I laughed. You're a terrible comfort, I said. You don't need comfort, he said. You need to get through Tuesday. He was right. I got through Tuesday. Weeks passed. Then a month. Then 2. The divorce paperwork had started. She had filed. I had agreed. We communicated through email mostly. Sometimes through the lawyer. Once or twice by phone when something needed a real conversation. Those calls were polite. Occasionally warm in the way that old wounds are warm. Not hot. Not angry. Just gently aching. She had taken over the business. Or what was left of it. Several of the major clients had followed me, which I hadn't engineered but also hadn't prevented. I had simply told those clients I was moving on. Some of them asked where. Some of them followed. She had enough to keep running. Whether she would or not, I didn't know. It wasn't my question to carry anymore. I want to talk about something that people don't discuss enough when they talk about the end of long relationships. The grief isn't just for the person. It's for the version of yourself that existed with them. I had been one half of something for 9 years. I had made decisions as part of a unit. I had referenced her in conversations as a given. We're thinking about this. We went there. We're working on that. Suddenly, all of that became I. And the I felt strange. Unfamiliar. Like a hand you've kept in a glove so long that when you take it off, the air feels foreign on your skin. There were nights I missed her specifically. Her laugh at the wrong moment during movies. The way she reorganized my bookshelf when she was anxious. The way she could read a room at a dinner party in a way I never could. There were also nights I realized I had been missing something else for years. Myself. My own instincts. My own pace. My own way of filling an evening without checking whether it worked for someone else's rhythm. I had loved her. I think I still did. But I had also quietly, gradually, handed over large parts of myself to the maintenance of us. And out here alone, I was getting those parts back. The new job pushed me in ways the business hadn't. Working inside a larger structure after years of being your own boss is humbling. There were processes I found frustrating. Hierarchies I had to learn to move within. But there was also something I hadn't had in years. Colleagues. Real ones. People I ate lunch with. People who didn't know the story I was carrying. To them, I was just the new consultant with good instincts and a tendency to arrive early. There was a woman on the team named Tess. Senior analyst. She had a dry sense of humor that took me a while to calibrate. We started having working lunches because our projects overlapped. Then those lunches became longer. Became easier. Became the part of the day I started looking forward to without examination. One afternoon she asked why I had moved cities mid-career. I gave her the compressed version. Marriage ended, I said. New start. She nodded. Did it help, she said. Ask me in a year, I said. Fair, she said. And we moved on. No drama. No pity. Just 2 people eating sandwiches and getting on with it. It was one of the most normal interactions I had experienced in months. And it meant more than she knew. By month 4, I had settled into a rhythm. Monday through Friday, I worked hard. I was learning the new city. Its good coffee spots. Its running paths. The bookshop 2 blocks from the office. The farmer's market on Saturday mornings that Owen had told me about and that I had initially dismissed and then started attending every week. I was building something. Quietly. Without an audience. Without anyone watching to see if I was okay. Just building. There was a particular Saturday in early February. I was at the market. I had a coffee in hand. I was looking at a display of winter vegetables without any particular intention. An older man next to me was talking to the vendor. He was explaining to his wife, who was standing behind him, why a particular variety of potato was better for roasting. She was listening with the face of someone who has heard this explanation before and loves the person giving it anyway. I watched them for a moment, and I didn't feel sad. I felt something quieter, something that was almost hope, not for a replica of what I had lost, for whatever came next, in whatever shape it took. The divorce was finalized in March. I received the notification by email. I read it twice. I closed the laptop. I went for a walk. I walked for almost 2 hours. Through the city, past the river, up toward the park near the north end. I wasn't processing it dramatically. I was just moving, letting my feet do the work while the rest of me caught up. By the time I got home, the evening had fully settled. I made tea. I called my mother. I told her it was official. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Are you eating?" I laughed. "Yes," I said. "Are you sleeping?" she said. "Most nights," I said. "Good," she said. And then we talked for an hour about other things. My brother's new apartment, the garden she was planting, a book she was reading, normal things. The kind of normal that anchors you when you need to remember what ground feels like. It was April when she reached out. Not through the lawyer. Not through email. I didn't call Owen either. I just let it exist. The grief of knowing that someone you loved was hurting. The complex grief of knowing you were not the solution to that hurt. The grief of recognizing that love is not always enough glue to hold two people in the same direction. These are the things nobody tells you about when they tell you that endings are sometimes necessary. They don't tell you that necessary doesn't mean painless. They don't tell you that doing the right thing for yourself can feel, in certain moments, like a very small cruelty. I sat with all of that. And then I got up on Thursday morning. I made coffee. I went to work. Summer arrived. I had been in the new city for nearly 8 months. The furnished apartment had been replaced by a proper lease. A real apartment. I had bought furniture. A couch I had chosen carefully. A desk lamp that I liked more than I probably should have. A bookshelf that I had filled in roughly the order that mattered to me. Owen came to visit in June. He spent a weekend. We went to a bar on Saturday night. We talked about everything. Work. His relationship. My year. He looked around my apartment at one point. "This feels like you," he said. "What do you mean?" I said. "I don't know," he said. "Before, the place always felt like a compromise." "You mean the house?" I said. "Yeah," he said. "This is just yours." I looked around. He was right. Everything in that apartment was a choice I had made without negotiation, without adjustment, without the unconscious editing that happens when two lives share a single space. It was mine, just mine. And for the first time in a long time, that felt like a complete sentence. She called again in August. I answered again. She sounded different from the April call. Steadier. She had made some decisions. She was scaling down the business rather than trying to hold its original shape. She had found a part-time consulting arrangement with a larger firm. She was moving to a smaller apartment. She was, by her own description, adjusting. "I owe you an apology," she said. "For what specifically?" I said. "For the cafe," she said. "For not being honest with myself before I was honest with you." I waited. "I think I had been unhappy for a while," she said. "But I didn't know the difference between being unhappy with the situation and being unhappy with you. And now," I said. "Now I think it was mostly the situation," she said. "And I took it out on us." I took a breath. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "Does it change anything?" she asked. "It changes how I understand what happened," I said. "But it doesn't change where I am." "Right," she said. A pause. "Are you happy?" she asked. I thought about it honestly. "I'm becoming someone I respect," I said. "That's a version of happy I'll take." She was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad," she said, and I think she meant it. By autumn, I had been promoted. Not dramatically. A title change and a project leadership role. But it meant something. It meant I had rebuilt credibility from scratch in a new environment. It meant the version of me that had felt uncertain and undersized after leaving had grown into the room. I called my mother to tell her. She cried a little. The good kind. I called Owen. He made a noise of satisfaction that only Owen could make. And then I went back to my desk. And I kept working. Because that was the thing I had learned in all of this. Rebuilding is not a moment. Rebuilding is what you do every morning. It's the small, unglamorous accumulation of choices. Wake up. Show up. Do the next right thing. Repeat. There is no single morning where you arrive and feel finished. You just keep going until the going starts to feel like living. Tess and I had dinner in October. Not a work lunch. Dinner. On a Friday. At an actual restaurant with an actual reservation. I had thought about it for a while before asking. Not because I was unsure about wanting to. Because I was careful about my own readiness. I had watched men stumble from one relationship into the next and drag all their unprocessed weight into a new person's life. I had promised myself I wouldn't be that. But I had also lived long enough to know that you don't wait until you're perfectly healed. You just wait until you're honest. Honest about what you want. Honest about what you can offer. Honest about the fact that you are a person who went through something real and came out the other side with more self-knowledge than damage. I was there. So I asked. She said yes without hesitating, which I liked. Dinner was easy. The way conversations are easy when both people are actually listening. She told me about her own detour. A job she had left 2 years ago to move to this city. A decision she had made against the advice of everyone who knew her. A decision she had never regretted. You learn more from your own judgment than from anyone else's, she said. Even when your judgment is wrong, she said. Maybe especially then. I raised my glass. To decisions made with incomplete information, I said. She smiled. And to showing up anyway, she said. December. Just over a year since the cafe. I was standing at the window of my apartment one evening. The city had Christmas lights strung across the streets below. There was snow on the edges of things. Not heavy, just enough to make everything look considered. I had a glass of wine. No phone call pending. No email I was dreading. Just a quiet evening. And I thought about that cafe. The small wooden table. The jazz playing. Her hands wrapped around the mug. The words she had said. The words I had said in return. I had thanked her. And I meant it. Not in a performed, graceful way. Not because I wasn't hurt. But because in that moment, something in me understood that the honesty, however brutal, was a gift. It freed me from a slow disappearing. It forced me to become deliberate about my own life in a way I had been avoiding. She had said she didn't feel the excitement anymore. And I had quietly wondered the same thing about myself for longer than I wanted to admit. Her honesty cracked something open. And out of that crack came everything that came after. The clean exit. The new city. The work I was proud of. The apartment that felt like me. The Friday dinner. The morning routine that was entirely mine. The version of myself I was becoming. All of it traced back to that quiet cafe. To those particular words. To a moment I hadn't chosen but had decided to answer honestly. I spoke to her one more time that December. She reached out to wish me well for the season. I responded in kind. We had a brief exchange. Warm but boundaried. She told me she had started seeing someone. A friend of a friend. Early days. I hope it goes well for you, I said. I mean that. I think you do, she said. That's the strangest part. What is? I said. That you're actually okay, she said. I kept waiting for evidence that you weren't. Why? I said. Because then it would mean I hadn't broken something irreparably, she said. I held the phone for a moment. You didn't break me, I said. You redirected me. Is that a real distinction? She said. It is for me, I said. Okay, she said. A pause. Take care of yourself, she said. You too, I said. We hung up. I stood in the kitchen. I finished my coffee. I rinsed the mug. I got on with the evening. I want to say something to whoever is sitting with their own version of a quiet cafe moment. Whatever form it took. Whatever words were used. Whether it was a cafe or a kitchen or a parking lot or a text message at 2 in the morning. The moment someone tells you they're no longer fully there. Here is what I wish someone had told me. Your first instinct will be to argue the feeling back into them. Don't. Your second instinct will be to disappear into grief until someone rescues you. Don't do that either. What you can do is stay honest about your own position. Stay honest about what you want. Stay honest about what you're worth. And then move. Not in anger. Not in performance. Just in the direction that makes sense for the life you still have ahead of you. Because here is what nobody tells you about the end of something significant. It is also the beginning of something. Not a consolation prize beginning. Not a lesser version. Just a beginning. Blank. Open. Waiting for you to decide what goes in it. That blank page terrified me for months. It still does sometimes. But I am filling it now. One honest choice at a time. One morning after another. One version of myself that I can look at directly. And that is enough. For now, that is more than enough. The following spring, I was sitting in a cafe. Not the same one. A different city. A different table. I had a coffee in front of me. I was reading something on my phone. Tess was across from me, reading a menu. She looked up. What are you smiling at? She said. I hadn't realized I was. Nothing, I said. Just thinking. About what? She said. About a year ago, I said. Was it bad? She said. Parts of it, I said. But it led here. She looked at me for a moment. Then it was probably necessary, she said. Yeah, I said. I put the phone down. I picked up my coffee. Outside, the city was waking up the way cities do on Saturday mornings. Slow. Warm. Full of people who had no idea what any of the rest of us were carrying. Which is to say, just like every other morning. Which is to say, exactly fine. There is one more thing I want to say. About the business account. People who heard parts of this story thought that closing the shared account was cold, calculated, maybe even cruel. I understand that reading. But here is the truth of it. When I sat down at that desk the morning after the cafe and opened the laptop, I wasn't operating from vengeance. I was operating from clarity. For years I had existed inside a structure we had built together, and I had assumed the structure would protect us. I had confused the scaffolding of a shared life for the foundation of a shared feeling. When she told me the feeling had gone, the scaffolding was suddenly just scaffolding. And scaffolding, without a building it's attached to, is just metal in the way. Closing that account was not an act of war. It was an act of architecture. I was beginning, carefully, to understand what the next structure would need to look like. And it needed to start from something that was mine alone. Something I owned entirely. Something no one could take back or reframe or revisit at a cafe on a Tuesday afternoon. That foundation is what I went to a new city to build. And I built it, brick by ordinary brick, on the most unremarkable days of my life. On the days nobody saw. On the mornings when getting dressed felt like effort and arriving at a desk felt like resistance. On those days especially, because those are the days that actually build something. Not the visible ones. Not the moments people see and call brave. The invisible ones. The Tuesday morning ones. The keep going anyway ones. Those are the ones that matter. Those are the ones that become the life you didn't know you were building. Until one day you look around, and it's there, and it's yours, and the silence in it doesn't have weight anymore. It just has space. Quiet, open, honest space. For whatever you decide to put there.